Good morning, worship team. I'm excited for you guys to be back so we can learn some more about music. Today, we are going to be diving into contemporary trailing texture and harmonizing in worship. To start, let's review some basic definitions. A melody is a sequence of notes that are appealing to the ear that the main vocalist will sing. And a harmony is a combination of notes that align with the melody, creating chords and chord progressions that are pleasing to the ear. Here is an excerpt of music where only the melody line is written. This would be found on like a lead sheet. This is the same song, but a different form of sheet music. And this one has the melody on the bottom note with two harmonies above. This is also an example of contemporary trailing texture. So let's dive into some of the logistics of contemporary trailing texture. So the vocal harmonies are always going to trail or follow the melody without deviation, meaning that there's never going to be any contrary motion compared to the melody. The harmonies are going to be both voiced in a close position, meaning all the notes are tight, leaving no note within the chord open or unvoiced. There should never be large spaces or gaps between adjacent parts, and all the melody notes that are part of the chord should be present in the metric harmonization or the chord progression, and the harmony should also be part of that chord. Each vocal line is dependent on the others and they flow all together, meaning there is no note that is held longer or different than the melody line. And an additional bass part can be added by doubling the melody. It is rare that a harmony part would be doubled without first doubling the melody line. This excerpt here is not an example of contemporary trailing texture because each melodic line is independent, meaning that it can move on its own and it goes different directions and they do not stay close-knit. In any given excerpt of music, there are going to be a few notes that are not part of the chord that is in the chord progression or metric harmonization. These notes are called non-chord tones, which are in between notes that are added to bring dimension of rhythm, contour, and musical interest to a melody that are not included within the given chord. So for example, if I had a C major chord with the notes C, E, and G, if I sounded an A, that would create a non-chord tone. So for a one chord, harmonizing non-chord tones, you're going to use a 2 chord. And for a 5 chord, you're going to use a 6 chord. And then in all other cases, you're going to use a primary triad, which is a 1, 4, or 5 chord. Anticipations should be sounded with the chord of the anticipation, as well as suspensions. And the definitions are found here on the screen of those two terms. And lastly, when using a 7th chord, choose 3 of the 4 notes in the melody and harmony. In this excerpt of Graves into Gardens, we can find at the beginning of the chorus, we have a D major chord, and the second note is an E, which is not in a D major chord. Then we have in the second measure there, a B, which is not in the chord as well. And then whenever we switch to B minor 7th, the second note of that measure is an E, which is also not in the chord. So each of these circled notes are non-chord tones. Now we need to recall the harmonizing rules for non-chord tones. And if we remember, for the 1 chord, we need to harmonize as a 2. And for a 6 minor, that falls into the all other categories, which means we would use a primary triad, which is 1, 4, or 5. So for our first non-chord tone in the first measure of the chorus, we have an E, and we need to harmonize with G and B, making a 2 chord. So this is going to put this chord in first inversion, meaning G is going to be on the bottom. Then in the second measure of the chorus, we have a B in the melody. We also need to harmonize this for a 2 chord, which means we have E and G left, putting this in root position. And then moving over to the B minor 7th chord, we have the option of using any of the 3 primary triad chords, which are 1, 4, and 5. And as we can see from the inventory, the only chord that has an E in it is the 5 chord. So we are going to harmonize the E with an A and C sharp. Shown here is an excerpt of I Surrender All. Let's take a listen to the beginning of the chorus to see if we can hear any non-chord tones. It is a little difficult to figure out exactly where non-chord tones are in this excerpt of I Surrender All, but I have circled 4 examples here that occur within these measures. Here are 3 different harmonizing options looking at the keyboard. The first option is putting the melody on the bottom. The second option is putting the melody in the middle with 1 harmony above and below. And the last option is having the melody on top with 2 harmonies below. Some main points to remember. The harmonies that are sung or played are the notes remaining from the chord that the melody does not sound. We need to ensure that we follow all of the non-chord tone rules, and remember that anticipations and suspensions follow the rules for the chords in which they are extending.